The Project Tribute Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to aiding our nation's first responders. Our vision and mission is to enhance the life-saving capabilities of our first responders through raising awareness and funding for the life-saving work that they do. Our goal with the podcast is to be an educational avenue and a method for our heroes to express themselves. In the podcast, we will discuss various tough subjects. Some of the subjects may be uncomfortable or controversial. Our guests have the right to share their thoughts and ideas, and for our listeners to hear the unedited words of our guests. The Foundation's role is to showcase a diverse array of thoughts and opinions within the first responder community. If you hear something that you do not agree with, please consider reaching out to us at projecttributefoundation@gmail.com and join our podcast. If you're a first responder and you would like to share your story, we truly would love to hear from you and learn from your experiences. Please enjoy this week's show, and as always, like, comment, and share to help us grow. You can find more information at www.projecttribute.com. Thanks and have a great one. Alrighty, good evening, everybody. So, John Beckloff and Jared Gorman with the Project Tribute Foundation. So this week on our podcast, Jared and I did the very first one, and we've hit a lot of topics that we want to come back to. And really the mental health and peer support just keeps coming up with everybody we've talked with so far, as well as our friends and coworkers that as they watch the podcast, they're going, hey, tell me more, or families telling me, tell me more. And so Jared wanted to really dive in. He has experience in starting a peer support group with his previous position in Lawrence, Kansas. And one of the things that we wanted to kind of open up is we ran across an article talking about just why do cops avoid counseling? So we'll get there as well, and kind of talk through that article and some myths and peer support and mental health and all those things. So Jared, thank you for being here again, and welcome to our fourth podcast. So where do you want to get started, man?
Well, so kind of like you said, we, just kind of brushed a few topics on our first podcast. And I mean, I get why, it was kind of the first initial podcast and we wanted to just kind of get some information out there. But I would love to get more into the peer support aspect of what I think needs to happen on every department, regardless of how big or small your department might be. Kind of go into mental health as a whole. It's I mean, as you know, mental health has always been looked at as, if you have a mental health problem, you're broken, and it's been completely separate from a true medical condition, whether that be, a cardiac problem or a breathing problem. I think it needs to be treated exactly the same. Unfortunately, staffing, training, and the availability of mental health treatments is way, way below what it really needs to be, just for the general public. And then you try to make it more specific by going to a group like first responders. You can see where the cracks in the system are. But that's why the peer support's awesome, because we can take care of our own people. We don't have to go to a hospital to be evaluated, to be told something that you probably already know, to somebody that doesn't really know where you're coming from because they don't see the stuff we do every day. And
I think that it's interesting to me that this is our fourth show, so 3 shows now, and every single time it has come up. It was very interesting to hear Justin call it PTSI. And I know Justin didn't coin the term, but still, like, that's so.
I had never heard that before either. So
right, and neither had John Castle, and John Castle's kind of been around. And then so what John did is he just left that last letter off. And so I really, so far to me, the way to wrap around for my head as a civilian is that PTSI. It makes sense. I mean, I've got a scar somewhere here from multiple surgeries, and you get the surgery, you learn how to deal with it, your hand gets better, and you move on. And that's really, like, John talks through his severe bout of PTSI eye, and how he recovered from it, and it's something he has to be aware of. So it's clearly a need that is out there, and on twofold. One is recognizing, hey, I'm not okay. What do I do about it? And then somebody being there to, hey, we're here to help you do something about it. Both of those are damn near impossible, but once you connect the dots, man, you can save some lives.
Right. Well, and just having the training with your own people will allow you to recognize in other people and even yourself, that, hey, this incident, even if it's an incident that happened 5 years ago, it doesn't have to cause a problem right then and there. It could be, like I said, 5-10 years later, and something reminds you of that call, and then it's the incident all over again, and that could be when you start having problems. But yeah, kind of like you said, it's a huge problem, and if we can start by just taking care of each other, and we looked for 10 minutes before we started this and found multiple different places that offer specific training to first responders only. And
I think that was it was fascinating to me talking with Justin, and he kept talking about the smell, and you don't think about you guys are, you're there. This isn't a movie where you're watching on screen and there's not, you're feeling everything, you're smelling everything. And like, it makes sense. Like, you go into a house that caught on fire, you're going to come back smelling like that house that was on fire. And same thing to you guys, because they go in and they bring somebody out, then you guys are there to start treating them, and they're going to smell like that. And so it is that PTSI is such an intricate thing, that way more than what I even understood. So that's why it's exciting. Do you want? I can bring up that article if you want me to.
Sure. Yeah.
So we kind of found this, and we just Googled several different things, and Jared found this one. But the part that I do keep seeing reoccurring is this section here, where it's talking about just the common factors that lead to burnout and the PTS. They call it PTSI, but the shift work. So not everybody knows what shift work is. I know that's basic, but tell me about shift work. What is that?
So, you can go to hospitals, fire departments, police departments, EMS, all of it's shift work. We don't go to an 8 to 5 job typically. There are some exceptions, but at a minimum, 12 hours would be considered a shift. So like in the ER, they work 4 12-hour shifts a week. With us, EMS and fire, we do 24 hours at a time. And so you're gone from, your house, aside from, volunteers, because they respond from, their jobs or house or whatever.
Right.
But if it's a paid, professional department, you're working 24-hour shifts. There are then multiple different forms of shifts. So you can work a tour. There's what's called a Berkeley shift, which is what I worked in Lawrence. It was 24 hours on, 24 hours off, and you do that for 3 working shifts. So just for the ease of explanation, you work a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we had 4 days off. So you'd have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off, and then you work Wednesday, Friday, Sunday.
Now that
just keeps rotating.
That's assuming fully staffed.
Yes.
So, because I think that's the other factor that's hitting us right now, that you and I have talked about it, Justin, as well, that, you may be thinking you had Tuesday off, but now all of a sudden the call rate your department alone, you guys have increased the amount of people working on each shift due to the high volume of calls. And so same thing with the police department. They've been working minimum manpower, so they've been calling people in at overtime. And so then you're not just working your 24 on, 24 off. Now you're working 24 on. Is there a legislation on how long you have to have before you can return?
Yes and no. It's kind of a gray area. And in Lawrence, if I can remember this correctly, it's been a little while. After 72 hours, you had to take a minimum of, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours off, which is nothing.
Right.
It should be it should be way more than that. But here in Bartlesville, we've had people that have worked 4 days straight, what I think should be illegal. Just,
Sure.
I mean, it's, especially if it's a busy service, and if they're driving, it's not safe. You're going to be tired, and
Well,
you need that break. I need that break. I don't know that I could work a 4-day straight.
yeah.
I don't.
No, because I
want
mean,
to.
it's one of those where you still have to decompress, and if you're, I mean, I've watched 3 different departments now, very active, and call an hour. So for 72 hours, if you're running a call an hour, goodness gracious, like that's by like
Yeah.
you don't even know what day of the week it is by hour 20, let alone hour 72. That's incredible.
Well, and the problem that I've seen with myself anyway is that when you're there, I could work a 72, 96, whatever, and I would probably be fine. I would be tired, but I don't see the problem until I get home.
Yeah.
I've had all my senses turned on. I've been ready for the call when it comes out for that whole tour, or the 96-hour shift or whatever. But then when I get home, there's nothing left physically, mentally. And so I feel bad for my wife sometimes, but I've come home and I'm not there. You have to have that decompression time, and everybody's a little different. I mean, some people might be able to do that, but I don't think they'd be able to do it very often. And if they did, I don't think they would have very good relationships. Plus, you're gone from your spouse or your family for that same amount of time.
Right.
So,
well, and I think that it's got to be tough on the spouse side of it, if they want to know what you're doing while you're gone and you don't want to talk
right.
about it. Like it goes back to our conversation on the very first one of people want to know what happened, and you're like, you don't want to know, and I don't want to talk about it. I mean, so that's kind of the shift work, long hours, and unpredictable schedules. The unpredictable schedules, in a perfect world, if you guys are fully staffed, that doesn't happen. But the problem is, in the world we're at today, even if just a department gets hit with COVID, but really what's happening is the call volumes are increased because people are stressed out, mental health, all that stuff. And I like locally, it's now appointment only. Are you guys getting more people calling you for non-emergent needs? Has that increased due to the pandemic?
Like as far as 911 calls, or people calling for transport? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, we hear about people going to the ER because I have a cough, versus the ER. Really, the ER is you're emergent. That's
right.
the purpose of it. But so they're getting flooded with, I have a cough, I want a COVID test, versus going to your primary care or urgent care. So is EMS seeing that level?
I'm not sure what other departments have seen as far as that goes, but I haven't really noticed a change in any of that. I mean, when COVID first hit, it was crazy because everybody was so freaked out, because nobody really knew what COVID was and what it did to you. And, I'm not going to get into all the
Sure.
news stuff that came out, but, they had people freaked out. And so we actually saw a huge decrease in our call volume to begin with. And we were only seeing true emergencies that, people were really sick that we were taking in. But, after I'd say, I don't know, 6-8 months of that, it started picking back up, and I'd say we're pretty much normal right now as to what we were. I mean, the call volume is more, but as far as the type of calls, I think it's pretty much about the same. And I do want to say a disclaimer. I know we've talked a lot about all the different, problems and stress and stuff.
Sure.
Fire, EMS, police is a wonderful job, wonderful career. There are more positive things than negative things. So I'm not, we're not trying to.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's the same thing, because if you join the restaurant world, that's my kind of claim to fame is it's the same thing. Like, I mean, I get to feed people for a living, but there's also that emotional toll where same thing. When I come home, I want to sit in the shower and just zone out.
Right.
So let's go ahead and hit that. What is one of the reasons you love the job? because you have to love it, otherwise you can't do it.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, I wouldn't, considering all the problems that we've talked about and all the stuff that could potentially happen, physically, mentally, I wouldn't still be in it if it weren't worth it to me, and if I didn't love what I did. So, um, I originally went to KU and got my pre-med degree, and my original intention was to be a physical therapist. I've got a brother that's got cerebral palsy, and walks with a walker, and that's kind of where my love for therapy came into play, because I always went to his therapy sessions, as his younger brother, and I've helped him through a lot of stuff, and that's where my drive to be a physical therapist came. I was a kind of a physical therapy assistant in a private practice for a while, and I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was one of those things that it was almost depressing to me. We see a lot of geriatric patients, and they're not gonna. I mean, you can't do surgery on a lot of them because of the risks that potentially could happen. And your grandpa, who's been sitting in his lazy boy recliner for 60, 70 years, isn't going to change his habits now. So I mean, you're seeing the same problems. Not really seeing a bunch of improvement. So I didn't. It was one of those things I just didn't see myself doing forever and being happy with it. And so I started volunteering as a volunteer firefighter. And kind of like I said in the first podcast, I loved it. I felt like I was pretty good at it, and just stuck with it. But I love helping people. I'm a very outgoing person. And so the communication aspect, I love. I mean, I'll throw it out there now. I was a KU cheerleader for 4 years, so I'm not afraid to be outgoing and talk to people. And
did you get to have the mustache during during that time? Is that?
I still wouldn't even call this a mustache. It's coming off tonight. I guess I'm already late. It's December 1st. It's past November, so.
Yeah, I appreciate a firefighter, now paramedic, and cheerleader. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that what I do notice is the folks that don't have passion for the job stand out, and they shouldn't. They're in the wrong place, and so it really is. I think that the goal of the foundation is we need to be realistic, and realistic to somebody that's interested in it. It's the same thing of, if you're going to join the military, you need to understand that your life is theirs.
Yeah,
that's how it is. And so I think that I want to make sure that people understand what you all go through, positive and negative. The hard thing is, since we're trying to save lives, we have to advocate for the things that take lives.
Sure.
And really showcase that. But I do think it's worth saying that, I mean, you're right. I have yet to come across somebody that didn't do it because they absolutely loved it. No one's doing it for the pay. No one's doing it for the glory. They're doing it because it was a calling, and they felt like this is where I'm meant to be. So no, I'm happy you brought that up. The the next one on here is that exposure to critical incidents. I mean, that one's kind of a given, that you guys are seeing lots of things, and you're going to go from transporting somebody to a bad car wreck. And so those are definitely tough. The one that caught me off guard, it makes sense though. And this website's towards police, but for paramedics and everybody really, being the frequent focus of public attention and criticism. I mean, I saw a video the other day where fire station, they went to Walmart to get groceries to then go cook at the firehouse, and the person was filming them going, "This is taxpayer money, getting groceries." Well, they got to eat, and they're getting food at the most cost effective method. But what have you kind of faced that level? I mean, have you ever felt scrutinized by the public?
I mean, not really. I do think that police and law enforcement, I think they have it a lot worse off when it comes to this kind of stuff than we do as fire and EMS. I think a couple times we've had some people say some stuff like that, but for the most part, I haven't really experienced a lot of that. Sometimes, we've gotten confused we all wear kind of the close to the same kind of uniforms. You know,
Right.
we're dress blues. You know, we've got the radio harnesses. You know, we don't have the the bulletproof vests and stuff like that, but I definitely think that the police force sees a lot more of this than we do. I mean, we even talk about it, you know, in fire and EMS. You know, they're happy when we show up. They're nice to us, and then as soon as a cop shows up, their attitude changes, and you know, that's I mean that's a real thing. But and our job has changed dramatically with you know, everybody's got a cell phone that's got a camera on it. So even in our training, you know, when I first started, you know, that kind of stuff was popping up, and so we were trained. You know, as soon as you come onto a scene, assume that you're being recorded by somebody. I mean, it could be across the street, but everything that you do is has the potential to be all over the internet. So, um,
Well, and that's a whole nother layer to this, that you go to a critical incident, and because of how things are nowadays, you have the potential for the rest of your life to be able to see the film of that incident that maybe impacted you.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I now that we're trying to grow the Instagram page and all that, you know, we're liking all the other fire departments and that stuff, and you see, you know, firefighter falling or almost falling through the roof, and you, it's easy to look at that and not understand that that individual and that team is going to live through that moment forever, and it's documented.
right.
Justin Miller talking about the photo. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a whole nother level to it. Wow.
One kind of to add to what Justin was talking about. You know, it's like you said. You know, your brain's a very very complex organ, and you don't you don't comprehend what your brain is storing during these incidents. And so I've had it happen multiple times. You know, we talk about smells, we talk about noises, images, whatever. You know, I've had certain smells that have popped up, and this is years later, and it'll, for whatever reason, bring up an incident that I didn't even know was still in my brain, you know, and
Right.
it happens at just random times, and you kind of, you can't really prepare for that, but it's kind of a weird deal. And I'm sure, I mean, you've had it happen before. You know, I don't know. It, uh,
No, I mean,
that's
I've had very few incidents in my life. I mean, but I came across going to work a down motorcyclist that he was trapped under a semi, and I remember everything about that moment. Um, I don't know what I had for lunch today, but I can tell you everything about that moment.
yeah,
Um, and that's one moment in my lifetime, whereas you guys are going to go 17 moments that day. And so it it really brings it home when you do have to kind of go help somebody. And you know, if a civilian goes and helps somebody, you know, somebody drowning, we dive in there and save them. We're going to make the news, and we're going to remember that, and we're going to tell all of our buddies, you know, one day I saved a drowning person. You are like, yeah, it was, you know, breakfast time.
well, I mean, stuff like that. We would, you know, that'd be something to pat yourself on the back for. But
Sure.
um, yeah,
The
you definitely.
Go ahead.
There's certain things, you know, like car wrecks. There's certain smells involved with car wrecks. You've got, you know, the antifreeze.
Mm.
There's a smell when the airbag goes off. There's a chemical, kind of a dust in there. Um, yeah. I can. I mean, it's almost like I can smell it right now. I know exactly what it smells like, and it's kind of permanently engraved in my brain. And I've got a big nose, so I can smell stuff pretty well. But
Well, and I think that that's one of the things that, you know, unfortunately, locally, we had a incredible individual that she passed away due to a car wreck, and you start realizing that first responders are serving their communities, and especially the communities that we're focused on in the foundation is small towns. Well, if you're going to go to a car wreck or, you know, any kind of trauma, this is somebody that you're going to know pretty well. Um, and that, I think that what people understand is that takes it to a different level, that you're going to be there, and the remorse, the regret, the all those things of, if I would have driven 2 miles faster, or if I, you know, I've heard that from one deputy, that that they felt like this individual that every Friday was getting drunk and threatening himself. Finally, he did it, and they were like, if I would have taken it just a little bit more serious, I would have been able to help him. And it's like, no, you wouldn't have. This was going to happen, but that local remorse and that building of what PTSI becomes starts at those moments that you guys don't have the control of, but because you need control, not need, but you show up on scene, you have control.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's tough. On the one of the things that you've talked about a couple times is the peer support, and then down here on this article, it talks about myth number 3, and I'm curious if you can dive into answering the myth on your side of it and really try to explain what the peer support is. We talked about it exists and understand it's a good thing, but we didn't really say what it is. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that.
Sure. So I'll just start basic. Like I said, we kind of brushed on it on that first podcast, but a peer support team, as far as we're talking about first responders go, I'm sure they have these kind of peer support groups with a lot of different professions.
Sure.
But specifically with first responders, it's, as the name suggests, it's a group of peers that you work with. And the reason that it's done that way is because, like we've talked about, it's hard to compare your working daily life with somebody that's not a first responder. So,
right.
My stories, and not to compare my story to yours, mine's gorier or whatever, but it's just a whole different perspective. I see things that you probably don't, and I see them multiple times, and it's hard to talk to people, especially if it's something sensitive as, hey, I'm really struggling. I've been depressed. I've started drinking more. It's hard for that person to empathize with you, and same goes for the other way around. If it's somebody that doesn't really understand where you're coming from and hasn't been in your shoes. So the peer support team that we kind of started in Lawrence, we took a bunch of guys, and it has to be people that are really interested in helping. And I'm not trying to suggest that people in the department aren't interested in helping each other out, but it's got to be something that you're passionate about and that you have kind of an eye for, because, as part of our job, we read people, because it's funny because some of our patients will tell us one thing, and we get them to the hospital and they tell the doctors and nurses a whole different story. And so we have to get pretty good at reading into people and reading subtle little clues and stuff like that can, really tell us what's going on. And we take those people, and there's training out there that helps us really dive into, what we're looking for. And it doesn't always have to be somebody that's, suicidal or, something to that level. It could just be somebody that's starting to, draw back a little bit. Usually they were really talkative and excited about their job, and now they're pretty quiet. They go to their room and kind of sit by themselves. And
the goal is the maintaining before it becomes crisis. So on the myth 3, because I also want to get to, before we dive too deep into what the website that's going around the bottom. So the myth is there's no reason to see a licensed professional. And really that's the peer support isn't supplementing mental health. The peer support is phase 1, frontline. I see you're struggling right now. And that's kind of how I read that. So then if you feel like, man, you need help, let's get you to help, versus we're the help. Okay. Now the website going below, you and I kind of found this, and you had just typed in peer support and came across this first responders support team. Now, is peer the 2 words peer support, is that a Lawrence, Kansas thing? Is that an industry term? If I'm just trying to, and I'm volunteer fire and I know nothing about this, and I watch this podcast because I'm crazy, I type in peer support on the internet, that's going to get me this result, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm not sure about, like I said, other professions,
Sure.
but I would always attach the peer support to, either fire department, EMS, police, or just first responder in general, because it's gonna, just like we talked about, if it's just peer support, let's say with what you do, the training as far as what you would be doing versus a first responder might be somewhat similar, but it's gonna be different, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just a whole different level, and perspective. Um, but yes, I mean, the peer support should be, as far as I know, it's not a Lawrence thing. It's an industry wide concept. And even so when I went through some training when I was at Lawrence, as we were starting the peer support team, we actually had the opportunity to become part of the the state of Kansas peer support task force. And
Okay.
so,
So it's a big,
oh
yeah.
yeah.
I wonder if,
So if there was a tornado,
well,
in
yeah,
Wichita, they would deploy,
yeah.
people from that Kansas task force and send them there.
Well, and so I just went under just that training tab under this First Responders Foundation, and there's a advanced peer support, Des Moines, Iowa. Um,
Yeah,
so okay, yeah. I mean, I think that in probably should put a disclaimer that we just Googled some items we don't represent. I mean, our representation is through the Project Tribute Foundation, but there are lots of resources out here, um, and so just a quick disclaimer. The one thing though is if there's any cost to any of this stuff, this is within our scope. If for example, well, here's a whole section of peer support training. So if there's a cost to peer support training, this falls within our mission. So if you've got a department looking at doing something like this, let us know and we'll send somebody to it, provided we've got funds in the foundation. Um,
sure.
that's interesting. I mean, so that answers the question right there that it's got just a section for peer support training. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's our goal, right? I mean, one or two or three people can't do this. I guess my vision for kind of the bigger picture is that we're able to get our first responders, trained in this kind of stuff, so that they can then do what we're doing. They can pass along their knowledge and information to other departments or other individuals that can then just keep that chain going. I mean, we're trying to break the stigma of mental health being this hush hush quiet thing that you need to keep inside and don't tell a bunch of people about. I mean, it
Well,
needs to be talked about. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at John Castle has done things that he can't talk about. And even he said, I dove into alcohol. So he can't talk about what he did in work wise, but he can still talk about I'm struggling. And I mean, so
yeah,
if somebody kind of that top tier level can do that, then us in the volunteer world, us as in you, I'm civilian, sorry. But we need to make sure that there's those capabilities and people know, hey, you've got to speak out because it gets worse if you don't. Um,
sure.
and I mean, this one even down to the spouse support too. So you had mentioned when you and I talked prior to podcast that the peer support, even a spouse calling and saying, "Hey, they're struggling today. Can you check on them?" It's not just men to men. It is anybody within the fire family or
Sure.
that department's family saying, "Hey," I mean, that was the thing that impressed me. It really is a support network that everyone knew this is the help that you can do, and it was union, non-union. It was just help.
Well, and
I don't,
there's even peer support groups for spouses of first responders, because
wow.
you know we we can do our best at reading our patients and the guys that we work with, guys and girls that we work with, but our spouses at home, even if it's girlfriend, boyfriend, it's hard to really know what's going on, because they want to show support for you because they know that you love what you do. They don't want to make you feel bad because, you've already been through a lot emotionally. You've seen difficult calls, whatever. And so a lot of times what we've seen is that the spouse doesn't want to really tell their first responder how they truly feel sometimes because, like I said, they don't want to make them feel bad. They don't want to make them feel guilty for doing what they love to do.
Right.
So they do have these, peer support groups for spouses, and that allows them to talk with each other and vent to other spouses that know exactly what they're going through, and they can, talk about how they've dealt with this or, dealt with that. And so it's not just, for us, it's for anybody that's involved. And like you've said before, when you join a fire department or police department, EMS, whatever, your family becomes part of that department.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to jump back and forth, but I'm trying to answer your question about that myth number 3.
Yeah, you're good.
You got to keep me on track. My ADD is kind of
sure.
So it says there's no reason to see a licensed professional because the rules are exactly the same with a peer support team. So I am not a counselor. I am not licensed as a counselor. I have training in recognizing when there might be an issue, and I'm going to attempt to get you to talk to me if you want to, especially if I think there's a serious enough problem that you need to get help. So when it comes to the legality of some of this stuff, aside from a few different things, if first off, we come to you or you come to us and you want to talk, I'm going to try to establish very quickly if this is just you and I talking, man to man, man to one, whatever, or if this is a peer support encounter. So by me saying that, I am legally protecting you and myself from anything that's said in that conversation and from anybody else that's going to try to potentially get information from me, from you, for whatever. So aside from, if you're homicidal, suicidal, or if you've committed a crime, aside from those things, anything that comes out of your mouth that you tell me, I cannot legally tell anybody else. Even if they can take me to court and say, I want you to tell me what this person said on this day. I can say no, and I am completely protected from that. Nobody can get that information from me. But like I said, I'm not a therapist, so I am going to take my resources that I've learned through my training and get you to that person that can continue helping you.
So you're just the taxi driver to the door of help. I mean, that's
basically, I'm an avenue to get you to, getting better.
So, I mean, you went and got certified, I'm assuming, and the department sent you and others. So I'm assuming that step one is just going to a training and folks coming back, and then you take the training and just say, this is what we've learned. Here's what we're here for.
Sure. I mean, if you're trying to establish a peer support team on your department, what we did, after we realized that, like I said, we were way underprepared for some of the stuff that we were dealing with. We knew that there were other peer support teams out there. And so we reached out to some departments that were around our area. We had, Olathe, Kansas City, and we really talked pretty deeply with those guys to figure out where we needed to start. Because it's a giant undertaking. I mean, just when you add mental health to anything,
right?
It's it changes that perspective a little bit. But we started by, asking questions, where do we go to get training? What training do we need to get? How many people do we need? How much money do we need? There's a lot to it, but you start taking those steps one by one, and it's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of time. And the biggest, our goal was to just make sure that we were doing everything by the book, kind of like we just talked about. We legally wanted to protect ourselves and our guys, but at the end of the day, we just wanted to help each other and be able to know what resources were available. I mean, so a lot of the departments have, what do you call it? The employee assistance program. Yeah, EAP.
Yep.
So we even have ties with some of the employee assistance programs that allow us to get from, point A to point B a little bit quicker. We can skip a few steps as one of our resources. And then, there's specific therapists we can go see and stuff like that too.
So if leadership is not bought in on this, can a peer support still exist? I mean, obviously with anything, if it works better with leadership buy-in, but if somebody within the department, not leadership, wants to start one, or the union wants to, but the officers don't, could they?
If your leaders don't want to, and I'm going to make a bold statement here.
Sure.
If your leaders aren't wanting to get on that boat, you need to look at your leaders pretty hard and figure out if you've got a bigger problem, because they should be on board with wanting to help their employees out, make sure that they're mentally sound, especially with what we do. I mean, we're out there night and day, 24/7, 365, 24 hours at a time, 12 hours at a time, whatever, in the community doing potentially dangerous jobs. I mean, you need your leadership to be behind you on taking care of your mental health and your physical health. I mean, they make you go get insurance, physicals every year and all that kind of stuff. I think a mental evaluation every year should be right there with a physical agility test. But essentially, yes, we approached it. We made it very formal. We had PowerPoint presentations and stuff, and documentation, statistics, where we could get the training, how much it would cost. So be prepared with it, do your research and reach out to us if you guys, are just trying to get started and want to know where to start. But the more information you have to present to your leaders, the better off you're going to be. I mean, it shows them that you're really making it a priority, and that you kind of know what you're doing. And if they don't have to do a lot of work as far as how much it costs and what it's going to take to make this work, they're going to be a lot more receptive to providing you with the funds and the time to do that.
Well, and again, I mean, this is right within the foundation's scope. So if you're listening and this is something you're interested in, I mean, I'll muddle through it with anybody to try to help figure this out. But this is something we will fund. We will fund the expense to anything that will save a life. And so if the certification cost or the hotel room to get certified, all that stuff, I mean, that's right within our scope. So if money's stopping you, reach out to us and we'll figure out how to get the funds. I mean, that's exactly why we exist, is to connect the dots. I do think one of the things we probably should do on the Facebook page is somehow do a post about peer support and say, hey, if you started one, post yourself here. That way somebody interested in starting knows, hey, I don't know, Lawrence, Kansas has a peer support. If you're near them, reach out to them. Here's their contact info. I'll make that commitment that on Saturday. So this will air Friday. So on Saturday, I'll have it auto post. That way we can start trying to just put a thread up there that if you've done a peer support, post where you got trained, how you got it started, and how to work out. Because again, I think that it's what I'm noticing, the common themes around all of this, the successful, just about anything is proper leadership and leadership buy-in. I mean, even John Castle talks about that in his book about bad leadership and good leadership. Bartlesville's thankful that, we have some great leaders in all the, police, fire, EMS. We've got some solid people at the helm, but not every town has that. And then some towns have lost their leaders lately. Ramona, they unfortunately, or not Ramona, one of the fire companies near us, their chief passed away, and so now they're trying to kind of resituate themselves, and so in that void it's tough. And so making sure that they're checking on everybody, it's fascinating to me how important proper and driven leadership is for for their staff.
Yeah. Well, and we saw pretty quickly, like I said, we reached out to some different departments that were around us when we first started, but making those connections is huge, because if we have we kind of keep track, especially with fire and EMS, we keep track of other departments that are around us locally, and we know if they ran a huge apartment building fire or had a rescue, any big incident. And so we started to see, if we had a big incident, we had multiple other peer support teams from different areas that were contacting us saying, "Hey, are you guys all right? What do you guys need? We'll be there in 30 minutes if you need something." So it's an awesome community. I mean, there's already a brotherhood within first responding, but you add in the peer support aspect to it, and it just gets even bigger. I mean, your families get bigger, and it's a chain reaction, right? I mean, with the peer support, you get that started, your chain just keeps growing, which is great, which is what we want. I mean, that's what needs to happen, nationally, globally, to get these statistics changed. I mean, we gotta stop letting our brothers and sisters die, and
Well, I mean, I shared on our Facebook page just moments before you and I logged in that yesterday there was an in the line of duty death, and it was a heartfelt post from one of the coworkers. And it really is, when a first responder passes. We had Kyle Davis when he passed. It's people understand it is everybody that came across him, from an inmate to the dispatch to Bartlesville PD, everybody that was, that came across, the amazing things that Kyle did, they were impacted by that loss. And so then to this big void now needs to they needed that massive group hug of, we're here to help. How do we help you cope with that? And I can't speak for what was or was not there. I hope all the resources were there for everybody from leadership down, because everybody has to take a second and look at that situation and go, how can we, what did we do right? How can we be better? All those things.
Sure.
But so it's the same thing, the exact same comment that when a first responder takes their life, same thing. How could we have prevented this, and what can we do to make sure that this stops? Because the 22 a day is focused towards military, but I mean, at one point it was like 30 something a day on the first responder side. And that's dwindled down. I don't know what the current number is, but it's it seems like it's at least once a week that I'm seeing something on my Facebook thread. So if I'm seeing it, and I've got 200 Facebook friends, there's quite a few out there that's happening that are preventable.
And those numbers, even the numbers that you're going to find, are not going to be as what they highly are, right? I mean, because some of that stuff isn't going to make it to mainstream media or whatever. So,
what else on your end do you want to? What else you want to talk about on peer support, mental health? Is there anything on your heart that you want to kind of keep going after?
As far as the mental health stuff, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the first initial steps. I mean, I would love for people to start reaching out, and we could, help them get started, at least just get an idea of what they need to do for their department. So there might be different approaches to things based on how big or small your department is. It should all have the same goal in mind, but you could probably approach it a little different depending on, if you have 20 people on your department or 200. So, I mean, you're going to need more people, of course, for, a department that's larger. But at the end of the day, peer support can mean whatever you want. It can be formal training, or it can be you sitting around the table after each shift and talking to each one of your guys and just sitting down drinking coffee. I mean, that's peer support at its very basic level. I mean, going out and getting dinner with a guy that is struggling is peer support. It's just you being there for your brothers and sisters and pretty much doing whatever you need to do. I mean, it doesn't have to be formal training. It can start right now. It doesn't have to be, I got to wait until I go take all these classes to, to do these peer support things. I mean, it can start right now. You can go up to somebody that you think might be going through something and just say, hey, you all right? You want to go talk? You want to go have some coffee? Go have a beer, whatever.
Well, and I think that the other side of it is what I've seen in the past bit. My career has been focused on the kid side of things, and people feel like if somebody's about to hurt themselves, that they go into depression and sadness. And sometimes it's the exact opposite. Usually they're quiet and now they are just incredibly, out there smiling, laughing, and to a degree, sometimes they're celebrating. Today's my last day. I'm finally done with this. And so it's not just seek out the sadness, it's change in behavior. If they're
Correct.
not acting how they typically do, that's what you need to be focusing in kind of saying, hey, you're different today. What's going on? I think that's the stigma is suicide and sadness, and that's not always the case.
No, and that's part of that training that you're going to get is just recognizing when something is different. I mean, like you just said, and it's a great point that it doesn't have to be Eeyore in the corner that's moping around. It's a change in behavior, and it's specific to each person. So if you the guys that you're going to know the best are the guys that are on your crew, on your shift, or whatever. But just knowing what and that, like I said, that's the benefits of that training is you're going to learn kind of what to look for, when to be more aggressive with trying to get that person to talk to you. Because I mean, essentially, I can't force anybody to want to talk to me. If they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. And that's fine. If it's something that I think is going down a dark path, I'm going to try a little bit harder and maybe get somebody else involved. But yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be somebody crying in the corner all the time. And we kind of brushed on this too, the first podcast. We get practice every single day with putting on a face. And so, yes, we're really good at reading people, but we're also really good at putting on a face and pretending like everything's fine. So a lot of times, the spouse has no idea what they might be going through because they leave work at work and they come home and they're maybe a different person than what they are at work.
So tough question then. What is something that, I asked last time, what's something that you don't want a civilian to ask of you? If you were to give advice to a spouse of a first responder on how to say, how was your day, or just to try to like get you to open up, what would your advice be? So a wife of a firefighter came home, you can tell something's off. What would your advice be?
It's kind of going to be a situational deal. I mean, I think you guys talked about you and John Castle about the verbal judo.
Yeah.
So that's a great book, by the way, but it's reading the situation and kind of forcing that conversation to go the way you want it by asking, specific questions, trying to be as direct in an indirect way as you possibly can. I mean, the thing that you don't want to do is put them on guard, right? You don't want them to put that wall up. So I would say one thing to maybe not do is, say, hey, what's wrong with you? I would start, by, if they like their favorite pot of coffee, make some good coffee, suggest that, you guys have a nice sit down, quiet meal that evening. No phones, no TV, whatever, and we'll just talk. Getting them kind of out of that on guard mode. So that's what I've been pretty open about, my struggles with stuff in the first responder world, but um, that's what I started doing pretty early on, was putting up a guard. And I didn't realize I was even doing it, but
Right.
there's a button that we have to turn on sometimes when we get to work, and it's hard to unpush that button or flip that switch back. And so, without her even knowing it, sometimes she was flipping that switch on, and as soon as that happens, I'm walled up. I'm not gonna talk. Um, I'm not gonna want to share, especially when it comes to emotional things,
Sure.
which is what needs to
Yeah.
happen. So
Well, and I think that if you're a first responder listening to this going, no, I don't do that, every one of you does that. Every one of you. I've been around
yeah,
enough of you, and I've been there during. We've been talking. You take a call, you come back. Every one of you does it. It's just some of you are better at it than others.
yeah,
So if you are here listening to this, fooling yourself, you are fooling no one. You do it. Stop. But but you are right though. I think that it takes a lot of communication all around of, your spouse, you all having kind of, I don't know, a code word, but maybe if she says pineapple, all of a sudden you understand, okay, she means that she needs to know what's going on. And you say, look, I can't right now. Um,
yeah,
but I do think that having that open conversation of, there's times where, look, don't push today. And here's, I just need a second. Or there's times where, nope, I'm pushing and you need to answer. But that takes the prior communication before the crisis.
yeah. So I'll just share my own personal thought on kind of what Laura and I kind of established. Once it took her pushing quite a bit to get
Sure.
me um, kind of
And
out
she's
of that.
tenacious. Yeah.
Oh, she is. That's why I love her. Um, it it took a while, but she just kept on me. She was very patient with me. But when I was unconsciously or subconsciously ready, it the floodgates opened. And from that point on, we established that, hey, if you see me struggling, if you see me acting different, call me out on it. I need you to call me out. And now that we have this established, I'm going to be aware that it's happening. Because as the first responder, sometimes, especially if you're not getting sleep on duty, um, you're not going to realize some of this stuff is happening. Everybody around you, if you're not talking to your friends as much, if you're not, doing some of the stuff that you've always used to enjoy, or, whatever, if you love to cook at home and you stop doing that as often or whatever. But Laura knows, if I start acting a certain way, or if I um, starting to get reserved or whatever, I've never been, like suicidal or anything, but it was to the point where I was depressed. I wasn't happy. I was always tired, and it was just a chain reaction that led to a lot of different things. Um,
And is
but
it
it's
safe? I mean, this is personal. So, but my
yeah,
assumption is it wasn't a single incident that got you there. It was a slow progression. Or was it
well,
a single
sure.
incident?
No, and I don't. To this day, I can't even tell you that it was a specific incident. I think it was just a combination of all the stuff that we deal with. If we go up on this list, it talks about um, the long hours, unpredictable schedules, exposure to critical incidents, physical demands. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I think it was just a combination of a lot of things over an extended period of time that just slowly. And that's one of the other difficult parts, is that sometimes it's not like an incident that makes it happen. It just slowly happens over time, and you get a little bit more depressed. You drink one more beer a night, and so it's kind of hard to see that progression. But yeah, it's you definitely need somebody to call you out on your BS sometimes. So, because
Yeah.
you're not the one to do it for yourself a lot of the time. So
Well, and that's what again, growing up, my granddad. He had PTSD or PTSI, but it was World War II in Korea, and he never talked about it. Well, man, I wonder, I wonder the stories he kept inside, and I regret not knowing his story. Partly because of my granddad, but the other part is like he saw some history and some things, and
Yeah.
he was his era was to bottle it up. And there's still that old school tendency of some to bottle it up, and you're not fooling anyone. Um, I mean, it's so I think that's powerful that you shared kind of yours, and I think that's why on especially I noticed on the fire side and really just first responders in general, you guys call each other out very quickly. It's getting your spouses to know, hey, I need you to call me out. I
Yeah.
think that's a pretty good takeaway of you all if you're listening to this, sitting down and just saying, hey. Have I changed? Or if I have changed, I need you to tell me. Or hey, if I'm having a bad day and I don't notice it, say pineapple. I that's my safe word apparently. I don't know. But no, I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
What else? What else you want to go over, man?
Man, we've gotten pretty deep with a lot of the stuff. I wrote a few things down here. I will say to add just a little bit to that, you know, if you guys have that open line of communication, I'm talking to you and your spouse. There's a good time and there's a bad time. If let's say I'm the spouse and my first responder comes home and I know something's wrong. I know they're not acting right, and it's not an isolated incident. I mean, there are going to be other times that it's probably happened before. If it's something that's getting, you've noticed getting worse and worse and worse, and now you're like, I've got to say something. Try to get that wall to come down, but it right then and there might not be the time to have that whole conversation. I mean, you might bring it up, and by bringing it up, it's going to put it in their head. They're now aware that I want to talk to them about something, and they once that happens, they're probably going to know what I want to talk about. But try to make a game plan from there. Just say, hey, take the day, this evening or tomorrow, even like the next day. Say, hey, let's go on a date night tomorrow, someplace quiet. We'll go talk. Just want to get back on the same page and the same level that we were, 2 months ago or whatever. And then that, by making a plan, you're putting stuff in their head and that gives them time to kind of prepare what they want to do and
Right.
what they want to say and what they want to share. And that's a huge first step if that's the point that you and your first responder are at. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's because you guys are lied to for a living. I mean, patients, police officers, whatever.
not all the time, sometimes, yeah.
Sure. But I mean, so because of what you deal with in the day to day, you guys are slow to warm up to anybody. And especially if you're law enforcement, man, I get it. Because it's taken me years to finally be comfortable to do the foundation and to come to you guys and ask questions, and years of you all understanding, hey, he's genuinely asking, not there's a take. And so I think that you guys get publicized, used, etc., by so many people that you're very sheltered with what you say, what you do, unless it's somebody at the firehouse. And so then girlfriends, spouses, whatever, that's hard for them to see it and to understand it until that first couple bouts with it. And they're like, okay, you've got to slowly warm that water up before you're willing to hop in that bath. I mean, I think that's solid advice, and I definitely think we need to do on the foundation side, post some stuff about the peer support networks and start getting more education on that. I did add mental health, a tab for mental health on our website. And really, it's got the standard suicide hotline and other resources. But for example, there's one where you can click the link and it goes right to a chat where you're talking with, I think, with a counselor, but it goes right to their service. So the foundation, we don't have any counselors on hand. We don't have any experts on hand just yet. Well, I mean, Jared's an expert, but within reason.
No.
But so at least what we can do is just try to give people towards the right direction, such as the National Suicide Hotline. And it looks like this firstrespondersfoundation.org looks to be a pretty legitimate option as well.
Yeah.
So as we continue to find options, we'll put it out there. But that's really the goal of the foundation, is that we're going to find resources and get resources to the hands of our first responders that can help save lives. Either like this is free. We just spend a little bit of time and go put it out there. But same thing with money. I mean, you and I were talking about Narcan earlier today. How do we get it?
Yeah.
How do we fund it? And then let's just get it out. Tourniquets is the low hanging fruit. I had a call earlier today with another gentleman. I don't know what he was talking about. I asked him to send me a link because it was firefighter jargon, and I don't know if we're talking face masks, ropes, or boots. I have no idea. But
I can be your translator.
and that's why we have the advisory board, is that. And so the whole idea of the foundation is to ensure that we are being relevant and we are putting real life-saving stuff into the field. Another big one is the shirt sales. I see you're wearing one of our hoodies, so thank you for that. Nice and soft. I'm impressed with how soft those things turned out on the inside. So those are some solid ones.
They're very nice.
But the hoodies and the shirts and those revenue pay for our ability to have the podcast or the website. But the donations is how we buy the Narcan or the tourniquets or pay for somebody to go to peer support training. So no ask is too big. I've got a list of about $4,000, $5,000 of asks that we'll try to fulfill in December. So if you're hearing this and you are a first responder and you're not sure where to start, neither are we, but reach out to us and we'll try to help.
Yeah.
So what else do you have, man? We're on the hour. What else?
Well, to add to your comment there about reaching out, I mean, we have, so the advisory board, we've got me, I've got, paramedic experience, firefighter background. We've got law enforcement that's on that as well. We've got, Justin, who's a fire chief of a volunteer department. So he has that volunteer background for a lot of the volunteer departments they might have questions. So we have a lot of different people with a lot of different knowledge available. So if you guys are watching this and have a question about, anything, we're first responder based. We're not just fire. We're not just EMS. We're not just law enforcement. I mean, we've got people, and if we don't know the answer, we'll find it out for you. But, like we've talked about, our goal is to be a resource and an avenue to get, life-saving equipment, resources, training available to first responders. So.
Yeah, so if one of the things that we did is we have the executive board that they're running the business, and then we have the advisory board, and the advisory board is first responders. So we have a police officer, detective, and then we've got Cody, who he actually works at the research center as fire, and then he does the volunteer fire. So he's got kind of the corporate chemical fire, or the bigger refinery level fires, and then the volunteer Justin, who does city and volunteer, and then looking at sheriff's deputies and paramedics. So really trying to get somebody from all sects. And then Brett, he served in the Marine Corps. So if you don't know this, there's never such thing as a former Marine. He is a Marine. And so we really do have a very diverse gambit of folks on our advisory board. And the whole idea is to ensure that we are always staying relevant and true to life-saving through the eyes of a first responder. And so that's what their role is to really make sure that we're staying in the direction that our first responders want. So, the peer support group, that's what's relevant. That's what's needed. And so we're going to keep on focusing on that. And then we'll bring in our other advisory board members and talk with them and see what they want to share with us. So,
yeah.
All righty, man. Well, what else you got?
So the last thing, I'm pretty excited about it. For those of you that have been watching all the podcasts, I would recommend going back and watching the first 3 if you haven't yet. But I have spoken with a few different people, one of which is the psychologist that helped us start our peer support team in Lawrence.
Fantastic.
Who only works with first responders, and she actually just started her own podcast as well. I'm not going to throw her name out just quite yet until we kind of get some stuff set in concrete. But she said she would be more than happy to come and join a podcast with us. And then I've spoken with another agency, basically, that is a therapist group that, again, only works with first responders. And so it's going to be awesome to get their inside, thoughts and ideas and their knowledge. Because, I mean, they're going to have the straight from the source resources to help us, get the information out to everybody else. And, if you're looking to start a peer support team or need help yourself, I mean, this isn't just to help you guys get, a peer support team started. If you guys are struggling yourself and need some place to reach out to us, and we'll get you the right resources we can. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to have some of those people on and keep talking about it and keep getting this information out there. And I'll say it again, I love what I do. There's lots of good things about being a first responder. It's not all dark and depressing and
you
horrible things every day. We see great things every day as well. So there are many happy moments.
Justin mentioned we see miracles, and I want to ask him. I regret not asking him. I want to hear about one of the miracles you've seen, and so I'm gonna add that to my, how do you thank a first responder, what not to do, and what miracle have you seen? Like, I feel like that needs to be asked every time, because you guys get to see some pretty incredible things. So, well, I appreciate it. If you're listening to this and you're not a first responder, but you're like, man, I really want to help in the mental health field, you can always donate to us, and we will use those funds, 100% of funds, towards our first responders. So if somebody reaches out right now, we've got some money right now, but we definitely use more. That way we can help more people. So if you're hearing us and you're interested in helping, projecttribute.com, there's a donate now tab. You can also just check out our gear. We use all the funds to operate from the gear, and then anything extra, which it's basically all of it extra right now, is going towards our first responders. And so help us help them. And we look forward to seeing you Friday at 8 p.m. when this airs. It'll be this Friday, and then every Friday at 8 p.m. we're gonna air another show. So Jared, thank you. Appreciate your time, man. We'll go ahead and log off for the night. So appreciate you, man.
Yep, you too, buddy.
This podcast is hosted by the Project Tribute Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to aiding our first responders. Thank you for listening. For more information on our efforts, check us out at www.projecttribute.com. If you're a first responder that would like to share your story, contact us at projecttributefoundation@gmail.com. You can find us on various social media and podcast sites by searching the Project Tribute Foundation. 100% of donations are used to save lives, while our retail store pays for any of our operational costs. Thank you again, and please be sure to like us, follow us, and share our foundation with your friends. Stay tuned weekly as we continue to share our stories from our nation's heroes. Thank you.